Welcome to the Immersion podcast. In this segment, I will tell you more about the purpose of Immersion. With my colleague who have been working in disaster risk management sector, I shall discuss the core factor that contributes into our overall resilience at the individual, family and societal levels. I will also discuss the utility of our storytelling methodology in a resilience project in Belize. Today, my first guest is Fred Pedroso.
My name is Fred Pedroso, originally from Brazil. Been working at the World Bank for about 8 years now. I'm a civil engineer, but heavily focused right now on disaster risk management projects in Brazil, Belize, Latin America, and Caribbean, and some other parts of the world.
I asked Fred if he has ever experienced a disaster and how he responded to that event.
Pretty much myself and my wife to New Zealand in 2007 permanently to start my PhD. And we were both studying at the university. And back in 2010, I remember that actually I left the country in a Friday night, and she stayed because I was going to Japan for a conference. And that's when the first Christchurch earthquake happened. So she was by herself. Again, my wife is also from Brazil. And we do not have earthquakes in Brazil, for instance. But she reports that once the first earthquake happened, it was about like 4:30 in the morning. She was sleeping, and she just naturally tried to go under the bed, or then she could not fit because it was a box bed, and then she moved to the door frame. And that actually is very, very much instinct, right? Instinct that was built through discussions on the topic, so on and so forth.
A young student living abroad in a culture that was a bit alien to them, a recipe for vulnerability. It sounded to me like an interesting story. So I asked Fred, what was one factor that makes you and your wife resilient?
I would say collaboration. Going back to my point or the example, I would laugh when my wife would say, I would like to experience such an event. And you might try to understand from a human perspective why one wants to experience such a bad thing, right? And we are a family of 4 now. We have 2 kids, a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, that we very much trying to struggle with collaboration to coexist in this environment. Right now, I'm working remotely. She's working remotely. The kids at such a young age, they have this online school, which is very challenging. So I think actually the thing would be how we collaborate.
It is a collaboration when all the family members acknowledge the problem and mobilize individually to respond to the crisis. The key ingredient for good collaboration is having a common or aligned perspective among individuals in a family and society. More often than not, collaboration is missing between the institutions responsible for reducing disaster risk and building resilient society. I spoke to Phil Barutha.
Yeah, hi, I'm Phil Barutha. I'm an assistant professor in the College of Engineering at University of Nebraska, and also an engineering consultant with the World Bank since 2015. So approximately between working in the industry and teaching, I'm going at about 20 years now in the industry.
Phil has been studying the challenges and opportunities in building disaster resilient infrastructure globally. And I asked him how the storytelling workshop has been helpful in facilitating collaboration for his project in Belize.
Coming up with resilient solutions oftentimes means a more wider perspective, a broader view, and that means bringing expertise from various different perspectives. But one of the challenges you have with bringing in people from different perspectives is aligning that. And just to set a little context on the workshop, and we talked about we had differing perspectives within the room. We had some perspectives that were extremely technical, some engineers with years and years of experience members of different ministries that had more of an economic background. And so our perspectives were varied tremendously within the room. And it really, the workshop started, I could say maybe just a little bit rocky due to those perspectives and people trying to communicate their perspective and feeling like others weren't understanding the difference in perspective. And there was definitely some friction early on in the workshop. Well, one of the things that we did was we presented a couple events. One of the events was a natural disaster in New Zealand. My colleague Fred had discussed a little bit about that, but really just a case study of that natural disaster and the impacts to that natural disaster. And the other case study that we presented or communicated to the group was a natural disaster event in Nebraska that's a little bit closer to where I am now, and the flooding event that happened in 2019. But we communicated that in two different ways. The natural disaster in New Zealand, we communicated through just sheer numbers, economic losses, disruption to transportation, sheer recovery cost, very high level and very numerical. The second presentation, the second case study, we actually presented that through the lens of somebody local in Nebraska that had actually experienced the flooding firsthand within their community.
It came as a shock. I remember actually a year before that I spoke on natural disasters and what I would do in it. I never once thought that Nebraska would ever in a million years be covered in water, and especially flooding. I mean, we get tornadoes all the time.
This is Bailey Scow, a master's student of civil engineering at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, United States of America. Bailey was part of the last year's storytelling workshop conducted in Belmopan, Belize with Phil and me.
And I remember one evening I was going to bed and my professor, we were working out in civil, and he goes, okay, now, you be safe. There's going to be a lot of flooding coming. And he was kind of saying it. I was like, oh yeah, flash flood. Like, it'll all drain out somewhere. I don't have to worry about it. And I woke up the next morning. My parents were actually out of state at the time, and we live on a farm. We're actually 2 miles up from the valley of the Platte River. And my parents called me and they're like, you need to go back home. We had livestock, we have animals, we have stuff like that they're like, you need to take care of certain things. And it was weird. It's a bomb cyclone. Like, we had 4 different seasons in one day. So we had flooding, we had rain, and it was still in the middle of our winter. I mean, it was blistering cold. And so we were out in this cold water. And then there was, it was super windy and the leaves are blowing, and it was just like this weird kind of gross feeling. And I remember driving back, and the part when it actually had hit me that I was like, oh my gosh, like, we are in a national disaster right now, is I was driving across a bridge and the water was up to it, and I could see the tip of every time I go home, there's these trees, and I could see just the tips of the trees, and I knew how tall they were. And there was a building that they actually had, they did their business out of. Like, you could just see the very tip of their roof because it was right along the river. And I mean, we didn't prepare for it. Mm-hmm. And then I also looked out to my left side and looked out to my right side, and I'm like, am I in the middle of the ocean right now? Because I couldn't see an end. And in Nebraska, you see an end everywhere. You see land. Even if you're on a lake, you see the other side. And like, so I got home, and like, luckily, I mean, we had neighbors, and everybody was like, we were all split apart. Cows were like literally halfway in snow and water and mud. And so like, we were pulling them out. I mean, we lost so much livestock. We've lost a lot of farm ground. The farmland, there was so much sand. It's a very sandy area that it actually washed out a lot of our farmland. So there was a lot of farmland that has been given up. It's going to take years of recovery to get that soil back, and to be able to start again. Nebraska, it's like you always help your neighbor.
We took a quick 5 to 10 minute break, and we brought everybody back in the room, and we assumed that everybody, the simplest people would remember the presentation slides of our case study in New Zealand, detailing out all these down almost to the penny, the economic losses, we had some engineers in transportation, so we assumed that they would really be drawn to the transportation impacts within the country. Maybe the costs to rebuild the infrastructure was going to be something at the forefront. Well, we conducted a short quiz and asked basically the details of the New Zealand case study with all the numbers, their economic losses, the cost to rebuild.
So New Zealand, the Kaikoura earthquake, what was the business dollar value, New Zealand dollar value, in the losses to business in business losses in New Zealand?
Close to 500,000.
Now raise your hand if you know the answer. So one person, what was
I
it?
think it was 1.3 billion.
That was Nebraska.
That's
Nebraska, yeah.
Oh, that was
400.
It's about close to 500,000.
No.
7 billion?
Do I hear it? Four. No, it's
This is Professor Phil Barutha conducting a quick quiz amongst the participants to determine the learning impact of storytelling.
Now let's go to Nebraska. So we know the total dollar value is 1.3 billion.
1.3.
So in Bailey's community, how many farmers lost their business in Bailey, went out of business in the community that
You can count them all in one
that
hand.
Bailey was working, that Bailey lived in?
5.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you know the answer. Raise your hand.
5.
There was very few out of the 20 plus participants within the room. There was very few, if any, people that could remember any of those details: the economic losses, the recovery costs, the disruption to the transportation. It really didn't matter their background. Nobody could remember that information. Now, the story, the personal account story, we asked about 5 questions, and the majority of the room was able to, if not all 5 questions, 4 out of the 5 questions, they had vivid recollection. The detail that was communicated throughout the story, and the perspective didn't matter if they were highly technical. They remembered the details. It didn't matter if they were highly financial. They were able to remember the details. That didn't matter if they had a social background. Those details stayed vivid in everybody's mind. And I think beyond that, the other aspect that was quite powerful was just the fact that no matter the background, individuals were able to connect. And I felt one of the key outcomes of that workshop was just that was better alignment of those perspectives. We were looking at a common problem is resiliency and the impacts it has on the country when we have these natural disaster events. That's the common problem. And really, I think what that workshop did was align that, get all our different perspectives, and we were much more aligned in our different perspectives.
Stories of disaster survivors are often packed with information and knowledge that can contribute into policy making and designing disaster risk management projects. However, to me, the utility of the stories of disaster resilience is to connect listeners and storytellers, allowing them to share their worldview with each other. At Emerson, this is our purpose. Whether it is a World Bank project in Belize or an expedition to India, we facilitate these connections for the purpose of building empathy. We believe that knowledge and empathy are 2 building blocks to make our society resilient. Due to pandemic, our activities have paused internationally, but we are preparing to resume as soon as it is safe to do so. Please stay in touch with us. Thank you.